皆さんこんにちは。ハミング代表の城川純です。今日のテーマはありのままのあなたの体を受け入れる方法です。あなたは今自分の体をそのままに受け入れることができていますか？それとも変わりたいと思っていますか？今回はそんな体型との向き合い方について、私がボディポジティブに関する本を出版したエミリーさんに聞きました。どうして私たちは痩せることを求めるようになったのか、体型の悩みのために普段の生活で何をすればいいのかを聞きました。あなたとの体の付き合い方に新しい視点をもたらす今回の対談、ぜひお楽しみください。
So in our first questions, I wanted to kind of focus on Japan. So in contrast to many other regions around the globe, Japan exerts significant societal pressure on women to maintain a slim physique. To counter such overwhelming expectations on a daily basis, how can one effectively cope with that?
Well, I think that anywhere where the beauty standard is thin, you'll find body image issues. In order to be resilient against social pressure to be thin, you first need to understand why body standards even exist. For me, this was a huge thing in writing my book and the body positive journey. So historically, these standards are tied to colonization and westernization, and they were later commercialized by businesses that found they could profit off of female insecurity. And eventually these companies learned to actually manufacture this insecurity in women through media and advertising strategies that promote unrealistic beauty expectations. So I think when you understand why your body's shamed on a regular basis by society, because it's good for business, you can start to challenge these standards. And some of the ways that help build resiliency against the thin ideal include things like focusing on how your body feels and doing things that make it feel good. Dressing comfortably, again, making your body feel good. Consciously curating your social media feed, so that you're seeing body positive content. And then also blocking or muting accounts that are promoting things like diet culture or fat phobia. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I love to suggest is focusing on your non-physical qualities. And this is something especially for women that we don't focus on enough. So things like being kind and smart and, really just not speaking about your body or other people's bodies in general, even if it's in a good way.
Are there any kind of daily exercises we can do, just little things?
100%. So one of my favorite things to recommend is mirror exposure therapy. So it sounds really confusing, but it's actually quite simple. But basically it's really staring at yourself in the mirror and sort of just taking it all in. For someone who's really suffering with negative body image, I suggest writing little Post-it notes of affirmations, putting them around the mirror. And it's really getting comfortably uncomfortable. So, when you see yourself in a picture and you're like, don't really love the way I look, you can also do it that way too, right? Stare at those pictures, accept them, don't delete them off your phone. Just be like, this is just an angle of me, of my body, of who I am. And the more you do it, you actually start to feel better about the way you look because you start to normalize these things. I always like to remind people that body image struggles, it's not fluid. It's very much an up and down thing. As women, especially, we're affected by our hormones. Our bodies change regularly because of all those things. So it's really important to note and just sort of accept how you're feeling and trying not to tie it to your worth.
Yeah. I grew up with a mother that was would remark about my weight once in a while, and especially when I entered my teenage years, when your body's going through changes, she would make kind of offhanded comments about it, which really affected me about my self-esteem. So I wanted to ask so what kind of advice would you give to mothers and fathers who are raising daughters and young girls to kind of encourage self-worth? What are some of the things that they can do to bring up their self-confidence?
Absolutely. It can be especially challenging to teach our children how to be body positive when we're raised by adults who have struggled with their own body image issues. And these ideals, these thin ideals, are often unconsciously passed down. But there are a lot of strategies that parents can use. So one of the things that's really important is not speaking negatively about your own body, because young ears are always listening. And maybe it's just keeping the comments that are sort of swirling your brain, you know, about your disappointment and the way you're looking, just keep them inside, or you know, talk about them in a safe place where there aren't young ears around, because you know, they're always listening. The other thing that's really important, just like for adults, is focusing on children's non-physical qualities and achievements. So of course it's nice to focus, to tell children that they are beautiful, but we need to prioritize other characteristics so that they know that their worth is not tied to the way that they look. So, you know, make sure they know that, you know, things like being compassionate and determined are much more important to who they are than, you know, the way they look. I think also teaching them to eat intuitively, you know, reminding them that there's no good or bad foods because when children learn that all foods are accessible, there is actually a less likelihood that they'll restrict and binge eat. Another thing is, you know, just modeling kindness to others. So again, like I said before, not talking about other people's bodies at all, even if it's a compliment. Like sometimes it's, you know, you hear someone say, "Oh, you look so great. Have you lost weight?" You know, we think that we're being kind in those moments, but what it is it's teaching kids that, you know, there is value in thinness. And then most importantly, I think that we need to start having conversations with children about what they see in the media, the stereotypes, all of that, as young as possible. So fat phobia and diet culture is so embedded and normalized in so many cultures that it's really important to help them identify it and challenge what they see, which will ultimately give them the confidence and teach them the resiliency that they need to have in the face of certain standards. So it's really important to teach them things like social media can be fake. There's so many filters and editing apps that can change how people look. So it's important to remind them that they don't need to change themselves to be accepted by others.
I guess what I'm asking is, like, in terms of like timing, right? Do you just like bring it up all of a sudden to the children, or do you kind of easily kind of like we don't want to traumatize a child?
No, but there's so many ways to do it. As a mother of two young kids, you know, bath time is a great time to talk about bodies in a positive way. Talk about how, oh yeah, it's different. You know, that this person looks a little bit differently. And it's also a great time to talk about body safety as well. But for me, it's sort of more of a situational thing.
So my next question is that I, you know, especially in social media, like I've seen it, it's really disheartening to see women, especially women, commenting on like other women's like weight gain or any kind of like changes.
Yeah.
And I think this is and then I kind of see it stemmed out into just on the playground. Like you see other kids like mentioning or just like commenting how gross it is. What kind of factors do you think contributes to this? I know you said social media, but like, do you think it stems like beyond that?
Oh yeah, like it's just embedded in our worlds here, right? Negative judgments or comments from others typically stem from a combination of societal norms, insecurity, social comparison, and fear. It takes so much empathy, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront biases and stereotypes to move past, you know, this response of, you know, negatively judging someone or commenting on someone. I think that most people are generally good, but we continue to recycle these standards and judgments because people simply want to fit in. You know, sometimes you'll notice people saying things and they don't really feel that way, but they're saying it because that's just what people say. Sometimes it's almost a defense mechanism too, right? People put other people down because they're so insecure themselves, right? So when people stand up against this behavior, they're creating change because people learn to be brave.
If you were to receive that kind of negative harsh criticism, like what can you do or say to the other person?
Yeah, first of all, it depends on if it's safe to address the person. If you feel safe or comfortable doing so, do it. If not, again, walking away is fine. Sometimes not even giving into these conversations. On my social media, sometimes when I post things, about different body types, or have posted pictures, I'll get negative comments, and I'm not going to change some of these people's minds. Usually they're from men. So, block, delete. But when you're dealing with like kids or maybe even adults, sometimes it's as simple as saying, hey, my body's none of your business, or, I don't like you making comments about my body. Like, it can seem very, very scary and intimidating to have that kind of conversation. But at the same time, and mostly when people are confronted in person, they're like, whoa, so it teaches them a lesson. And, it teaches you that your body really is none of their business if you can speak up to that. But also there is no shame in walking away and ignoring people and surrounding yourself by people who actually, don't say negative things about your body. Obviously with family, it's a little bit different because you can't always like cut those ties, but you can enforce your boundaries by being honest and authentic. And, hey, that really hurts when you say that. I'd prefer if you didn't speak about my body. So many ways to say it, and it can be so simple as that.